From this point on, my brother and his wife have decided that they'll run the household by themselves, asking me to find a different place to live. My mother, siding with them, treated my presence as a nuisance. Do they even realize who's been paying for most of our home expenses? Such disregard was something I never saw coming. My name is Melissa, and I'm a 31-year-old woman who has lived at my parents' place since returning from college. Initially, I dove into the corporate world, aiming to carve out my career path. However, the hurdles proved too daunting, and I returned home facing a period of joblessness. During this time, I explored remote work opportunities, leveraging my background in science. I started a freelance engineering career, taking on small projects at first. The pay was modest, but the freedom to work independently held profound significance for me, offering a stark contrast to the structured environment of traditional jobs. This setup allowed me to earn a substantial income with minimal social interaction. As my confidence and client base grew, so did my income, eventually matching what I would make in a typical corporate job. Nevertheless, the main challenge was my parents' understanding of my work setup, particularly my mother's hesitance. My father seemed to get it after I explained, but my mother, who clings to traditional views, couldn't grasp the concept of working from home. Despite my efforts to clarify, showing her client emails, and pay statements as proof of my legitimate work, she remained dubious. She would often question the sustainability of my career and hint at its possible illegitimacy, suspecting it might be some underhanded business or even connected to some questionable group, despite the regular payments proving otherwise. Despite my detailed explanations, my mother's doubts persisted. She frequently voiced concerns over my dependency on what she saw as unstable unemployment benefits. While I had thought about moving out and living independently, my savings weren't quite ready to handle such a transition. During this period, my father's health began to decline, with worsening conditions in his legs and back requiring nursing care and leading to his early retirement. He assured me his pension would be enough, but knowing my mother's spending habits, I knew challenges lay ahead. As I watched my father's face, the lines of worry and fatigue were evident, mirroring his anxiety about our uncertain future. Throughout my college years and my subsequent return home due to mental health challenges, he had been my unwavering support. The thought of leaving him to fend for himself while I pursued an independent life weighed heavily on my heart. My mother, too, was visibly shaken by the abrupt decline in his health, struggling to grasp the sudden change. In light of these circumstances, I felt a profound sense of duty to give back to the family that had supported me through thick and thin. I reassured my father of my commitment to support the family financially from then on. He was initially surprised, questioning the sufficiency of my income. However, I confidently demonstrated the stability of my financial situation, which seemed to alleviate his concerns. My father, who had always tried to understand my unique work situation, was pleasantly surprised by my newfound financial stability. Encouraged by his acceptance, I took on the responsibility of contributing to household expenses, medical bills, and other financial obligations. Each month, I began transferring a significant portion of my income into my father's bank account. Aware of my mother's frequent use of my father's credit card, I took proactive steps by creating a new main card for myself and providing her with a supplementary card to help manage spending more efficiently. My father, always cautious about finances, urged my mother to adopt a more frugal approach. Despite my contributions, my mother remained skeptical and even questioned whether it was still appropriate for me to live at home. I defended my position by highlighting the financial support I was providing, arguing that my absence would make things more challenging for everyone. Although she was initially unconvinced and suspicious of my motives, my father's steady persuasion eventually swayed her to allow me to stay. As I continued balancing my work and household responsibilities, I noticed my mother increasingly taking my efforts for granted. Her expectations for the household chores grew stricter, often chiding me to complete tasks faster. "Can't you finish your chores quicker?" she would complain. I tried to explain the challenges of multitasking while maintaining a full workload, but she dismissed my concerns. The strain in our relationship grew, becoming seemingly irreparable in stark contrast to my father's understanding and appreciation of my efforts. Despite this strained dynamic, we persevered in this manner for a year. However, after that year, my father's health deteriorated further, necessitating his hospitalization. I visited him daily, maintaining our bond and support through this tough time. In those moments of shared concern and reassurance, my father expressed his gratitude, fully recognizing the tension between my mother and me as he faced his health challenges. Despite the emotional toll it sometimes took on me, I stayed committed to supporting my family, drawing strength from memories of my mother's dedication during my student years. However, the dynamic within our household took a sharp turn with the unexpected arrival of my brother Matthew and his wife Catherine. They announced they would be living with us to supposedly lighten my load. This news caught me off guard, and I noticed my mother avoiding my gaze during the discussion. Although Matthew and Catherine claimed they were here to help, their words seemed to carry an unspoken implication that I wasn't doing enough, my mother sadly hinting at my need to contribute more. Despite my surprise, I learned that Matthew, a graduate of a prestigious college, had secured a position at a well-respected company. This revelation made me question the real reasons behind their sudden move into our home. Surely, with Matthew's substantial salary, they could manage without relying on my financial support, especially since I was already fully engaged in my career pursuits. Adapting to life with Matthew and Catherine at home proved more challenging than expected. One morning, as I was deep in my work, Catherine's voice pierced through. "Wake up, Melissa. Make breakfast." She banged on my door, demanding attention. As a morning person already up and focused on my tasks, I explained that I was already working. Despite this, they insisted I prepare breakfast, pressing me to hurry along with it. The added demands of accommodating my brother and his wife added another layer of complexity to our already tense household dynamics. Catherine demanded I get breakfast ready, her tone leaving little room for protest. Reluctantly, I dragged myself to the kitchen. Our family usually enjoyed a leisurely pace in the morning, savoring meals when everyone, including my mother and Catherine, was around. I had always thought it was common for a wife to prepare breakfast for her husband, but Catherine insisted on a collaborative effort, and so I joined them. Despite my best efforts, their dissatisfaction was immediately apparent. "Is this what you prepared for breakfast?" "This isn't enough," they critiqued. I had meticulously arranged a breakfast plate with soft scrambled eggs, a crisp lettuce salad, freshly buttered toast, and a succulent sausage, thinking it would be appreciated. Yet it seemed I had somehow missed the mark. "You don't have to eat it," I retorted, surprised by their blunt criticism. Their shock was palpable, and quickly their surprise turned to confrontation. They questioned my attitude and demanded to know who I thought I was. My brother, often condescending and perhaps influenced by our mother, mocked me despite my attempts to explain my work commitments. They dismissed them outright. "What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" they exclaimed, frustrated by their lack of understanding. The disruption to my work annoyed me. I grabbed my laptop, ignored their further protests, and left the house. As I walked away, my brother's voice followed me, demanding to know where I was going. I ignored his question and made my way to the hospital where my father was staying. Rushing into my father's hospital room, I found him looking up with a surprised expression. "Melissa, what's wrong? You seem flustered," he observed. I recounted the morning's events. My father, wearing a look of concern, responded, "I didn't know they were acting like that." "I'm sorry, Melissa. Don't worry about it. You can choose your way of life." Feeling somewhat lost and worried about my mother's comfort, with Matthew at home, I shared my concerns. The conversation with my father provided a much-needed perspective, reminding me of the importance of standing up for my own choices in life. My father offered me comforting reassurance, saying, "You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily in the way you choose." Bolstered by his supportive words, I decided to leave home that evening. As I returned, I walked into a scene that felt straight out of a tense movie. The serious expressions on the faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law were unmistakable. My brother immediately accused me of shirking work responsibilities, claiming he had to take the day off because of my absence, a decision I internally questioned for its ease. Their voices grew louder, culminating in my brother's stern command. "Get out of here. From now on, the three of us will live together. If you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you to support us." His words were a blow, and to my surprise, I could only muster a confused, "Why?" Ignoring my protest, my brother and his wife were adamant about my departure, declaring that I was no longer needed. With our father absent, my mother aligned with their sentiments and saw me as an obstruction. My frustration mounted as they downplayed my role in managing the family's finances, focusing solely on their concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity and unwillingness to let the situation deteriorate further under their control, I devised a plan. I discreetly transferred the funds from the credit card my mother used daily to another account I managed. This move was designed to catch her off guard when she found she could no longer use her card. I also initiated a transfer of money from my father's account, a critical support for the family's financial stability, to reinforce my position and ensure they understood the impact of my contributions. I made sure that only my father's medical expenses could be withdrawn from the separate account I had set up, a detail that my mother was not aware of. This meant a significant financial burden would now shift to my brother and his wife. While I wasn't fully aware of the specifics of my brother's income, I was confident that he would now truly feel the financial strain. After completing all the necessary arrangements, I packed my belongings and announced my intention to leave. "I'm leaving this place." To my surprise, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had previously been relentless in their harassment, were visibly shocked by my decision. Their expressions of astonishment showed they hadn't anticipated such a decisive move from me. Yet, despite their shock, there was a subtle hint of enjoyment in their reactions. As I declared my departure, they made belittling remarks and expressed their relief with biting comments like, "You're finally leaving. We've never dealt with such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, are you?" In response, I firmly stated, "Of course not. Don't contact me." They smiled as I walked out, but I couldn't help wondering how they would cope once the reality of my absence and the financial implications settled in. Embarking on a new life in a tranquil environment, I found solace and the freedom to enjoy my own space. Refreshed and focused, I immersed myself in my work. However, as I had anticipated, the peace was soon disrupted by an unexpected call from my brother. "I told you not to contact me." "What's wrong?" I asked, my tone reflecting my annoyance. His voice carried a mix of surprise and urgency as he inquired about my involvement in the family's financial transactions. Confirming my role, I reminded him that I had explained my work responsibilities multiple times, but neither he nor our mother had taken them seriously. Expressing his confusion, he admitted, "Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I was a little confused." It was an acknowledgement that perhaps they had misjudged the situation and the fault wasn't mine after all. He explained that they were in a financial bind. With my absence, they found it challenging to manage expenses, and my mother's unchecked spending had only made things worse. Although I felt a twinge of sympathy, I firmly stated, I was able to support you in many ways because I was living there. Now that I'm not, you'll have to manage on your own. The situation took an unexpected turn when my brother urgently contacted me again, asking for help to transfer money into his bank account. Baffled, I half-jokingly asked if he was serious, especially since he had been working at a sizable company. To my surprise, he admitted he had been fired due to a significant error at work. This revelation left me momentarily speechless. It seemed he might have moved back to our parents' home under the assumption that there was plenty of money to go around, possibly relying on the idea of a stable pension after our father's retirement. Wanting to clarify the extent of my financial contributions to the household, I found a certain irony in imagining his shock upon discovering the reality. His wife and my mother also joined in, pleading for financial help, claiming that they were nearly out of savings. My mother even disclosed that my father had decided to stop contributing to the household finances. In response, I declared that I had supported them sufficiently and urged them to work hard and support themselves. I chose to cut off communication, emphasizing my decision to distance myself from their financial difficulties. Meanwhile, my father, aware of the tension in his relationship with my mother, consulted a lawyer and decided to pursue a quieter life elsewhere. I continued to visit my father daily, maintaining our close relationship. During one of these visits, a friend informed me about my brother's ongoing struggles, further highlighting the consequences of their lack of financial prudence. He had settled into a modest apartment, adopting a frugal lifestyle. Meanwhile, my mother, who had always been a homemaker, struggled to adapt to her new job. My brother found it challenging to mesh with the opinions of his younger colleagues. Despite his wife's efforts to support him, she eventually found the pressure overwhelming and chose to leave, forcing my brother and mother to face their challenges on their own. Concerns lingered about my mother, who continued her old habits of overspending, leading to mounting debts. However, I recognized that there were limits to the assistance I could provide without compromising my stability. Focused on my endeavors, I worked diligently from my comfortable living space, gradually accumulating more resources and contemplating new ventures. I aimed to spend quality time with my father, who remained a source of cheer in my life. Each moment spent with him was cherished, appreciating the peace and happiness he now found away from the familial tensions.
No marriage registration means you have no rights, Marcus smirked, lounging on our leather couch with an air of superiority that made my skin crawl. Jessica and I have discussed it, and she'll be moving in next week. You can take the guest room or leave, your choice. I stood in our living room, my living room, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. At 34, I never imagined my husband of 8 years would be sitting there, casually telling me his 23-year-old girlfriend was replacing me in my own home. You really think it's that simple? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. No marriage certificate means I just disappear. He laughed, that condescending sound I'd grown to hate over the past year. Exactly, I checked with my lawyer. Without official registration, you're just someone who's been living here. Jessica and I are starting fresh, and legally, you can't stop us. I set my mug down carefully on the coffee table, the same table I picked out when we first moved in. Marcus had insisted we didn't need to register our marriage back then. Why waste money on paperwork? He'd said. We know we're committed to each other. Now I understood the real reason. When does Jessica arrive? I asked, walking toward my home office. Next Tuesday, he replied, clearly pleased with my apparent acceptance. She's bringing her designer furniture. This place needs a younger woman's touch. I closed my office door behind me, my hands trembling as I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside lay a manila envelope I put there 3 years ago, when I first suspected Marcus was hiding something. I'd hired a private investigator then, not to follow Marcus, but to look into our property records. The PI had discovered something interesting. Marcus hadn't actually bought this house as he claimed. His uncle had left it to him in a will. But there was a crucial detail Marcus either didn't know or had forgotten. I pulled out the document and read the words I'd memorized long ago. Property to be held in trust until marriage is legally registered. There was more about how the house would revert to other beneficiaries if certain conditions weren't met. But that first line was all that mattered now. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica herself. Can't wait to redecorate. Hope you're not too heartbroken. I smiled for the first time that day. Marcus had been so focused on using the lack of marriage registration against me. He'd never bothered to read his uncle's will properly. The house wasn't his to give away, and Tuesday was going to be very interesting. Walking back to the living room, I found Marcus on the phone, probably with Jessica, discussing their plans for my home. He looked up as I approached, his expression smug. One question, I said, holding the envelope behind my back. Did you ever actually read your Uncle Robert's will? The full version, I mean. His brow furrowed slightly. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, actually. I pulled out the document and held it up. Because according to this, you don't own this house. Not legally, not until you register a marriage, and since you never did. The color drained from his face as I placed the document on the coffee table. That's impossible, he whispered, reaching for the papers with shaking hands. Your uncle was old-fashioned. I continued, enjoying the way Marcus's confidence crumbled with each word. He believed in doing things properly. Marriage, registration, all of it. Without that, the house belongs to the trust. And guess who I spoke to last week? Marcus looked up at me, realization dawning in his eyes. You didn't. The trustees were very interested to learn about your situation. They'll be here Tuesday too. Perfect timing, don't you think the next few days were a masterclass in watching someone unravel? Marcus spent hours on the phone with his lawyer, his voice growing increasingly desperate as he realized the trap he'd laid for me had snapped shut around him instead. There has to be a way around this, he hissed into his phone, pacing our kitchen. I've been living here for 10 years. I sat at the breakfast bar, calmly sipping my morning coffee. 8 years, I corrected. You rented before that, remember? He shot me a venomous look. This is all your fault. You went behind my back, dug up private family documents. Public records, actually, I cut in. Your uncle's will is filed with the county. Anyone can look it up. I just did my homework. His phone buzzed again. Probably Jessica. She'd been texting constantly since yesterday, demanding updates. Their perfect plan was falling apart, and she wasn't taking it well. Jessica's already given notice on her apartment, Marcus said, trying a different approach. His voice softened, attempting the charm that used to work on me. Be reasonable. We can figure something out, split the value maybe. I raised an eyebrow. Split what value? You don't own anything to split. The trustees were very clear. Without a legally registered marriage, you're just a tenant who's been living here rent-free. The doorbell rang, making Marcus jump. I checked my watch. Right on time. That'll be Mr. Patterson from the trust, I said, standing up. He wanted to do a preliminary inspection before Tuesday. Marcus grabbed my arm as I passed. Wait. We can fix this. We could register our marriage now quickly. I gently removed his hand. You already announced your intentions to move your girlfriend in. Pretty sure that violates the spirit of the marriage requirement. I walked to the door, leaving him standing there, face ashen. Mr. Patterson was exactly as I remembered from our meeting last week, elderly, impeccably dressed, and radiating no-nonsense efficiency. Mrs. Walker, he greeted me formally, using my maiden name. Everything in order. Come in, I said, leading him to the living room where Marcus stood frozen. Mr. Patterson, this is Marcus. Marcus, this is your uncle's estate trustee. The look Mr. Patterson gave Marcus could have frosted glass. Ah yes, the nephew who thought he could circumvent his uncle's wishes. He pulled out a folder. I've brought the relevant documents. Your uncle was quite specific about his expectations for this property. Marcus sank onto the couch, all pretense of control evaporating. Uncle Robert wanted me to have this house. He told me. He wanted you to have a proper marriage and family here, Mr. Patterson corrected, not to use it as a bachelor pad while playing house with various young ladies. I bit back a smile at Marcus's expression. Mr. Patterson had done his research thoroughly. The trust position is clear, he continued, laying out papers on the coffee table. You had 8 years to fulfill the conditions of inheritance. You chose not to. Therefore, the property reverts to the trust's control. Marcus's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then quickly looked away. I caught a glimpse of Jessica's message. The movers are all booked. Can't wait. How long do I have? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. The trust requires vacant possession by next Friday. Mr. Patterson replied. That's 10 days to make alternative arrangements. He turned to me. Mrs. Walker, given the circumstances, the trust is prepared to offer you a short-term lease at a favorable rate, should you wish to stay. I smiled, thinking of the apartment I'd already viewed. Thank you, but I have other plans. Marcus's head snapped up. You knew this was coming. You've been planning this. Unlike you, I said quietly, I believe in being prepared. After Mr. Patterson left, Marcus sat in silence for a long time, staring at nothing. Finally, he looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. When did you figure it out? He asked. About the house. 3 years ago. About Jessica. Last year, when you started pushing back against registering our marriage. You got sloppy with your texts. He nodded slowly. And he waited all this time? I waited until you showed me exactly who you are, I replied. Until you tried to use the lack of registration against me. Karma's interesting that way. Tuesday arrived with all the drama I expected. I was in the kitchen, packing the last of my cookware, when I heard the commotion outside. Jessica had arrived with her moving truck, right on schedule. What do you mean we can't move in? Her shrill voice carried through the open window. Marcus, you promised me this house. I walked to the front door just in time to see Mr. Patterson and 2 other trustees intercepting Jessica and her movers. Marcus stood to the side, looking like he wanted to disappear into the perfectly manicured lawn he'd always been so proud of. Miss, Mr. Patterson was saying, his tone clipped, this property is under trust management. No unauthorized occupancy will be permitted. Jessica turned to Marcus, her perfectly made-up face contorting with rage. You said this was handled. You said your wife had no rights. Technically, I called out from the doorway, he was right about that part. I don't have any rights to the house. I smiled sweetly. But neither does he. The moving truck driver was already backing out of the driveway, clearly wanting no part of this situation. Jessica's designer furniture would have to find another home. This is ridiculous. Jessica stamped her foot, looking every bit the 23-year-old she was. I gave up my apartment. I bought new furniture. Marcus, do something. But Marcus just stood there, defeated. He'd spent the last week frantically searching for loopholes, calling in favors from lawyer friends, even trying to contact other family members who might influence the trust. Nothing had worked. The trust position is final, Mr. Patterson stated firmly. The property must be vacated by Friday. Any attempts to occupy it without authorization will result in legal action. Jessica's face crumpled as reality finally sank in. But where am I supposed to go? That's not our concern, Mr. Patterson replied. Turning to me, his expression softened slightly. Mrs. Walker, I trust you'll be finished moving out by tomorrow. I nodded. Everything's almost packed. The lease on my new apartment starts today. Marcus's head snapped up. You've already found a place. Like I said, I replied, I believe in being prepared. Later that evening, as I packed the last of my personal belongings, Marcus made one final attempt to talk. We could still fix this, he said, hovering in the doorway of what had been our bedroom. Register the marriage, make it official. We could have the house back. I closed my suitcase and turned to face him. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the house. It was about respect, about building a life with someone who values you. You failed at both. What about Jessica? He asked quietly. What about her? You promised her something you didn't own, just like you promised me a marriage you never intended to honor. He had no response to that. The next morning, I handed my keys to Mr. Patterson. My new apartment was smaller but bright and airy, with a balcony perfect for the herb garden I'd always wanted to start. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed with a message from my friend Deanne. Just drove by the house. Jessica's furniture is sitting in Marcus's parents' driveway. His mom looks furious. I smiled, imagining the scene. Marcus had always relied on his parents bailing him out of trouble, but a house full of modern furniture and an angry girlfriend might be beyond even their capacity for cleanup. A week later, I ran to Jessica at a local cafe. She was alone, stirring her coffee absently. "He's living in his parents' garage," she said when she saw me. "Claims he's between properties right now." She laughed bitterly. I should have known when he wouldn't make anything official with me either. "Some lessons are expensive," I replied, grabbing my to-go order, "but they're worth learning." 3 months later, I received a formal letter from the trust. They had sold the house to a young couple who, ironically, had just registered their marriage. Mr. Patterson included a personal note. "Your ex-husband tried to contest the sale. The judge laughed him out of court." Standing on my balcony that evening, tending to my flourishing herb garden, I felt nothing but peace. Marcus had tried to use the lack of marriage registration against me, thinking it left me powerless. Instead, it had revealed exactly who we both were. Him, a man trying to cheat the system, and me, someone strong enough to walk away and build something better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about showing someone that their attempt to take advantage of you becomes the very thing that sets you free.